But right here, buddy, that's a tattoo.
Wow, that's David Dunham.
Fact or fiction?
Eric Dungey had no chance away. Flips it to Watkins again.
This is the Nachos Analysis College Football Show, presented by Pump Monkey Septic Services.
Welcome to Season 2, Episode 3 of the Nachos Analysis College Football Show. Today is Thursday, September 7th. Tigers fall to 0-1 for the second time in 3 seasons. I'm your host, Drew Archer, and I'm joined by my co-host, Matthew Johnson. Matthew, how's it going?
As good as it can on a evening like this, but, we'll get into it. I'm sure we have a lot to talk about in this episode. I think it's going to be a long one.
Yeah, this might be a long one. To give you an idea of what we're talking about today, we're obviously going to review the Week 1 loss to Duke. Tigers fall 28-7. And then we're going to review some of the more notable games. There were a lot of good games. There were a lot of duds, but there were a couple surprising games that kind of jumped out to me, specifically Colorado and TCU. So we'll talk about some of the notable games from last week. We'll discuss our Twitter poll as usual. This week's Twitter poll was, what was the most disappointing aspect of Clemson's performance Monday night? We'll break down the options there and what the listeners had to say. And then former Clemson running back and host of the Journey podcast, Darien Rencher, will join the show. We'll talk a little bit of NIL, transfer portal, which is a hot topic right now amongst Clemson fans, and review a little bit of the Duke game with him. After that, we're going to wrap up with fact or fiction before we give our contest picks of the week. And then Clemson's got a get-right game this week with Charleston Southern. We'll preview that. It's a team that Clemson has zero history with, so not as much to talk about. But I think we'll spend a lot of our time at the top of the episode reviewing this Clemson game. And I'm mistaken, Matthew, you got some stuff you want to get off your chest.
Yeah, I'm just going to come right out and say it. I know I texted this to you and a few of our family members who like to talk football, but I'm off the Dabo train right now. I'm completely off of it. Get him his statue, put it out front by the new Tiger Walk, put his name up on the Ring of Honor, but get him out of decision-making roles. I don't want Dabo to have control of the program anymore. I am ready for a change. I'm ready for a new coach. I think Dabo, I appreciate everything Dabo has done for this program, and that's why I'm saying we need to honor him, give him his cushy administration job where it has one responsibility he has to do a week or something, basically put him in retirement. This is what I'm looking for the Clemson program if things continue in this way. That's my opening thought, Drew. I don't know if we can get into the more particularly stuff about the game, but that was my overall general feeling after Monday night.
Well, I was also upset Monday night. I don't know if I would go quite as far as to say that we need to put Dabo out to pasture. I think we have a good example in Columbia of a legendary coach who won a couple national titles, moving to a administrative role, and that hadn't worked out too well for him. But I do understand the frustration with what we saw on Monday night.
It's not even Monday night. I'm sure people listening to this have seen on Twitter or other Clemson fans talking about what Clemson's last 7 games as a program have looked like spanning through last season. 4 losses out of the last 7 games, and 3 of those 4 by 17 points or more. That's just not the Clemson football that we've become used to. That's the Clemson football that I was used to when I was 8 years old.
It's been a big turnaround. It's been a while since we've seen that many losses pile up that short amount of time.
Yeah. But if we want to move on and just start talking about the actual game, because I'm sure I'm sure we have a lot. So my first thought was the defense was really slow and they looked slow against a Duke offense that I thought we would look very fast against. Specifically at linebacker, which I know going into the season we all kind of thought was going to be a strength of this team, was the linebacker position. But looking at Barrett Carter and Jeremiah Trotter, they got out of position very often, and they were just over pursuing, getting juked out by people way less athletic than them. They were just getting too ahead of themselves, I'm pretty sure. And it's pretty disappointing to see. That was supposed to be one of our strengths on defense, and just to see him get exposed in week 1 like that, it does not, I don't see how you can't see my side of things of being just this doomer saying blow everything up. But
I understand your point there. They definitely left a lot out there on the field. The missed tackles they piled up, and were a big part of some of the touchdowns that Duke scored. I think the defensive performance was the best when we're looking at all 3 phases of the football. Defensively, you have your missed tackles, but it's also one of those kind of scenarios where when the offense is not getting it done, your defense is on the field, you're bound to eventually start to slip up and give up. But not to say that any of that's excusable. Those guys you mentioned are NFL bound guys that are proven. They're 5-star guys that are capable of better, which makes it that much more frustrating to watch.
Yeah, exactly. Those 2 guys that I named, Barrett Carter and Jeremiah Trotter, if you go back to our first episode of season 2, we were talking about these guys of being the core of the defense. And then just to see him over pursuing plays when Riley Leonard be scrambling out, it got exposed very early too. It was on probably the first or second drive that Duke had, where Riley Leonard would scramble and one of those 2 linebackers would over pursue, and he'd have an easy cutback lane and gain 5 more yards after running past him. Just not something you really expected to see. So it's pretty sad, pretty disappointing, I guess, is the main feeling I have towards that. Another player we talked about a lot in preseason, expecting big things out of, that I was very disappointed in, Antonio Williams. He had some big catches on offense, but you could tell he was trying to do too much. I don't know if anybody else gathered that from watching Antonio Williams play, but it seemed like every time he got the ball, he was trying to make more out of a play than the play was given. He'd run backwards. He ran backwards after a first down on one of his first catches of the game. Punt returning, he ran backwards a lot. He's just trying to use his athleticism, and it's I understand where he's coming from, but you're trying to do too much right now.
Yeah, that punt return comes to mind immediately.
Yeah.
Catching that one inside the 5-yard line you can't do that. I think he was probably our 3rd best offensive player in the game, however.
Yeah, I still think he had a great performance, especially with those big catches he had on offense. One of our only receivers that was catching the ball.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another thing, I'm kind of going completely out of order. This is not segmented into offense, defense, special teams. I'm just going through chronologically how I experienced this through the game. I miss BT Potter.
Amen.
I'm trying to Avada Kedavra everybody on our special teams right now. That's a Harry Potter reference. But yeah,
on that note, your Harry Potter reference while you're trying to abracadabra, Emily and I, parking, we had to park almost a mile away from the stadium, so we had to walk through the campus, and there was just this, it's a agricultural building with it was probably 1,000 different plants in there, and it just reminded me of some kind of potions class or something you'd see in Hogwarts.
Herbology would probably be the class.
Herbology.
Next, I'm going to move over to defense a little bit. This is a bright spot. I'm not mad about this next point. TJ Parker, Peter Woods.
Yes.
As soon as they got in, I believe it was the second Duke drive that they got their first snaps. They were difference makers, and you could tell that they are for real. So very excited to see what TJ Parker and Peter Woods do. We heard about P-Woo all through summer, but TJ Parker's a name that I honestly might have heard for close to the first time when Jason talked about him last week. He was one of the people that Jason Priester last week told us to look out for this season, and he was right. TJ Parker is that dude. He's going to have a great career here.
Yeah, I think he only had a handful of tackles, but I was listening to another broadcast earlier today, and I believe I'm remembering correctly, TJ Parker was the fifth best scoring defensive player for Clemson according to Pro Football Focus, and he had significantly less snaps than some of the other guys.
Yeah.
So I definitely think you got a bright future in Parker and Woods, and I'm excited that interior line position is going to be the strength. If Clemson has any chance of competing with Florida State, it's going to be right there at that position here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, at this rate, if TJ Parker isn't starting by week 4, then it's a loss. Like, we're wasting his talent pretty much by bringing him off the bench if we're waiting that long to start him. I think he showed Monday night that he deserves and has the talent to be out there with the ones.
Absolutely.
Continuing on defense, I'm going to call out Barrett Carter one more time. I'm going to look into the camera when I say this one. I'm sure Barrett Carter watches every episode of this podcast. Barrett Carter, you and Nate Wiggins owe Riley Leonard a Father's Day card. After that 44-yard run where we had 2 guys wrapped up on Riley Leonard in the backfield, and then he escapes and then stiff arms Nate Wiggins in the face and just tells him to sit down. It was embarrassing for a Clemson fan to watch that play. Like, I hope Barrett Carter and Nate Wiggins are giving Riley Leonard the due respect. And
Nate Wiggins forgot to put his seatbelt on that play.
That's funny. Yeah, maybe if Nate Wiggins would have strapped in on that play, then it would have been different. I mean, I think another thing moving on about the offense, we really started moving the ball well when we started pounding Shipley and Maffa, and you were there, so you didn't hear any of the commentary, but it was talked about a lot on commentary about how the 2-back sets Clemson runs with Maffa and Will Shipley just gets the defense so out of position because they don't know where the ball is going, and we move the ball so well when we do it too. It's like it's like a completely different offense when we have the 2-back set, and with this thunder look that we got right now, I think it's something we definitely got to go for moving forward. If the less 2-back sets we see going forward, the less chances we're going to have to win games this season.
Yeah, I like that formation. I like having both of those guys in there and kind of looking at the breakdown of how the game shook out. Dabo's always been someone who wants his offense to be balanced, and this week was no different. The Tigers had 43 passing attempts and 40 rushing attempts. My question is, I don't have as much of a bone to pick with Garrett Riley yet. I think a lot of his play calling may have been a result of how flustered and nervous Klubnik looked. But if that's the case, if that's why you're altering the plan, why not feed Maffa and Shipley? I know you tweeted it during the game, but to only have 40 carries when he's struggling a little bit, get the ball rolling, keep the defense on its heels, like you said, with those 2 backs in there, I think that's something that if Cade continues to struggle with, you're going to need to run the ball a little bit more to make him feel comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, not thinking about the second half necessarily, but in the second quarter when Clemson started moving the ball, it was because we were running the ball. And I can remember 1 or 2 drives, particularly in the first half, where we ran the ball very effectively down inside the 30-yard line, which I'll refer to from here on out as the green zone. The inside the 20 is the red zone, inside the 30 is the green zone, because inside the 30 should be guaranteed points. with a good field goal kicker. So we would drive into the green zone 3 or 4 times in the first half and not be able to finish. We'd stall, we'd start passing the ball, get behind on downs, and then you kind of take away the running option when you're 2nd and 13. Like, a 6-yard run is still going to give you 3rd and long. So, like, you kind of take away your running down at that point. So I think we just got to keep pounding the ball. Obviously, we need to vary up the carries, because the one drive that's sticking out in my mind about where we did actually pound the ball all the way down the field to the 1-yard line and continued pounding the ball, we handed it to Phil Maffa like 4 times in a row, and on the 4th time he fumbled. So I think having the getting the run game going, being the dirt raid offense, but also getting some more variation in which running back is carrying the ball on each play, because I mean, it's just Phil Maffa, if he's running the ball, getting 7 yards a carry, 4 carries in a row, he's going to be tired on the 4th carry. So he's not going to have as good as ball security. It's just, I feel like it should be obvious, but it's hindsight. It's hindsight. I mean, we saw the fumble. If I were the coach, I probably still would have called a run play right there, maybe varied up giving it to Shipley or something, but I still would have called probably the same play. Like, in that situation, I'm not that mad about that one.
And to your initial point, like, they moved the ball. We had 29 first downs, or Clemson had 29 first downs in the game, and only came away with 7 points.
Yeah, the first game
in green zone.
Sorry to cut you off. I was just going to say the first game in school history where we rushed and passed for 200 yards and didn't win.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's frustrating to see, and that's like, we'll discuss it a little bit with Darien, but it was the same way I described it. I saw Coach Swinney describe it in his post-game. It was a weird game. Did Clemson play good? No, they did not. But they did enough things well to rack up these first downs, to move the ball. It was just like any opportunity they had to get an edge or get across the goal line, they shot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the offense moved almost as well as you would think or you could want it to. Running the ball down their throats, almost no resistance on that front. And then once we get into scoring position, lose yards, penalties, turnovers. It's just really frustrating. That's why it's such a weird game. I know I tweeted this out. I'm just going to bring it up briefly. We don't have to talk about it for very long, but I think Dabo's seat warmers got turned on for him. He's driving in his F-150 this season. Somebody pressed his seat warmers, turned him up to the first level at least, getting him warm. You think Dabo's got any pressure on him right now, or feeling any pressure? Like, he's been the guy for a long time, but do you feel like he feels too secure in his role, or do you think he'll feel the pressure?
I think that Dabo, as much as he says that he tells the team to block out the noise, I think Dabo's always listening, and I think he knows the pressure. But the people that are putting pressure on him are people who I don't think he cares to listen to on that front. Emotional fans are not someone I think Dabo's going to feel pressure from, though that's who it's coming from right now. I don't think Dabo's seat got any hotter. I do. Did you say he might be a little comfortable? I think he could be a little bit comfortable. I don't know though. I don't think the seat is getting hot. I don't even think it's warm. The only way his seat is warm is this 100-degree weather we got right now. I
mean, I guess let me put it this way: if the season were to have started with the South Carolina game last year and we were 4-3 right now, would you think differently? Say we were 7 games into the season and we were 4-3, you wouldn't think that?
I mean, that there might be a little bit more pressure and a lot more outside noise, but after everything he's accomplished here, one season like that is not going to necessarily change that now if it continues to be a repeated pattern, which I know the Tigers have had a couple down years prior to this season. See another year like that after a 4-3 start or whatever, but no, I don't think so.
Interesting. I just feel like Dabo set himself a standard, and it's really high. And I don't want to. I think he's a great guy. I don't want that to get lost here. Like, I'm glad he's Clemson's coach. I would hate him if he was anybody else's coach, but I just feel like the times have changed a little bit. It hasn't been consistency. It's been a slow decline since, I think Darien will mention it, since pretty much the 2019 Ohio State playoff loss. There's been a pretty steady decline since then, and no trend upwards since then. Other than
you have to consider he also lost Brent Venables and Jeff Scott.
Yeah,
and he made a error in hiring Coach Streeter. He's corrected it, and I think you got to allow the time for it to play out with Garrett Riley.
That's true.
And then you at that same time you had back-to-back generational quarterbacks, and did people get upset when you mentioned Kelly Bryant? Kelly Bryant, I don't know. Would you rather have Kelly Bryant right now? Nothing against Cade Klubnik. He still took a team to the playoffs.
Yeah, we might have to bleep me out here, but I talked a lot of shit about Kelly Bryant when he was here, because just the obvious drop off going from Deshaun, and then you had the Kelly Bryant year, and then the Trevor Lawrence year. We felt, at least speaking from my personal experience, I felt that was the lowest Clemson was going to be in the next 10 years, was the Kelly Bryant years. Coming off of the Kelly Bryant years, 2018, we beat Alabama by 28 to win the national championship. Like, you almost feel at that point that this is just the start, like, of the dynasty. And pretty much ever since then, it hasn't lived up to what we thought it was going to be, I guess. So, another thing I kind of wanted to bring up, I wanted to shout out Shaq Smith. He's a former Clemson player, if you don't know, played linebacker / edge rusher. I kind of thought that I was the reason that Shaq Smith transferred from Clemson, because I kind of have a track record of every Clemson player that I like watching, or like will get their autograph or make a graphic about them, like, they're not going to be on the team within a year if I do that. So I remember very specifically.
Don't make a graphic of Will Shipley.
I have made one of him before, but I was going to say Shaq Smith, pretty much, it was in the off season, but I had started going through players that I was excited for and making graphics for them to post throughout the off season a few years ago. And Shaq Smith was one of the ones that I made. It probably wasn't that cool. It was a few years ago, but it was cool at the time for me, a cool graphic of Shaq Smith. And then a week later, he announced he was transferring away from the program. So all to the side, but I'm happy to see that Shaq Smith is still a Clemson follower and enjoys Clemson football, because he was tweeting throughout the game. But this is one tweet that he posted that I really want to point out. He says, to be honest, this is the first time I've heard Dabo talking about winning a national championship before the season, and that the boys, the team, had their blinders on, thinking national championship, new offensive coordinator, new offense, new quarterback, a lot of momentum. Back in the day, Shaq Smith says we were focused on winning the opener and going 1-0 in each week. Do you think that Clemson maybe got ahead of themselves this season? I mean, we even talked about it with Jason last week, that this team was talking national championships 2 weeks ago.
That is one thing that I've seen. I saw his comments on Twitter, and to my knowledge, at least publicly, I haven't watched every Dabo Swinney interview, but usually you hear that mantra of winning the opener. It's not something that I've heard. And just what we've heard out of the program, it does seem like there was a lot of talk of national championship. hopes. But I mean, obviously that's your goal starting a season.
Yeah, it's
but
okay to have that goal.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see this one. It's something that's usually kind of in your face, like goal number 1, win the opener. It's not something I've heard or seen this season.
Yeah, it almost felt like, I mean, we're outside of the program, obviously, but it almost feels like this game got overlooked. We were looking ahead to Florida State even, looking at national championship odds, and just completely forgot that Duke is a competent football team.
I know I was looking forward to a night college game day game against Florida State.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll still get it. We never know. I had one more point to talk about this game. I kind of already mentioned similar, but Clemson's 3-4. I might have said 4-3 actually, but 3-4 in the last 7 losses in that span to Notre Dame by 21, South Carolina at home. Which, another thing, I'm gonna get distracted here, but one thing that I don't think people have been talking about is we had field goals and special teams errors against South Carolina. This is not a new thing that happened in this game. It's a consistency, like it's a coaching thing, I believe. I saw some people calling out Cade Denhoff on Twitter about not picking up the edge rushers on on PATs and stuff, which, I mean, I'm not going to call out anybody specifically except for you, Barrett Carter, and Nate Wiggins. But it's a trend. Like, I don't think it was unexpected to see us get our ass kicked on special teams this week. But that's a different point. Going back to the 3-4 in the last 7, I said USC at home, Tennessee by 17, and then Duke by 21. That's courtesy of Patrick Brown on Twitter. I wasn't really familiar with that name before Monday night, but I saw him tweet that out and wanted to give him credit for posting that. So it's just not a good trend. 3-4. Okay, I guess let me rephrase the question I asked you earlier. If Dabo was 3-4 to start the season, is his seat warm?
I say same answer.
Same answer. See, I feel like as a program, he was able to build the program up to such a level that you create a new expectation. The expectation at Clemson now and for Graham Neff should not be a 9-win season is a good season. We've changed that. We're past that now. And until this season, when we prove that a 9-win season is a good season, I'm just gonna keep saying, if you're under 10 wins, it's not good. And Dabo seat should be getting a little warm right now, because I want Graham Neff to put some pressure on him and let him know that, like, we'll take care of you, Dabo. You did a lot for this program, but what you're doing right now obviously isn't working.
Yeah, Graham Neff ain't doing that. The second or third year on the job.
He's not going to he's not going to put pressure on the 15-year vet.
Yeah, I don't see that happening, but I say let's not put the cart before the horse, which is normally a good expression, I guess, implying something good's happening. But this team still has, like Darien mentions in his interview coming up, still has all its goals before it. Right now it doesn't feel good. Right now it doesn't seem possible. But I'm going to hold out a little bit of hope. I tend to be a little more optimistic.
Yeah. Did you have anything else to talk about the game that I didn't cover specifically?
Well, I think you might have covered it all. No. I do want to start off by saying a fun trip to Durham, North Carolina was ruined by a football game. It was a beautiful campus. Emily grew up a huge Duke basketball fan, so we got to go on a tour to see Cameron Indoor Stadium, which was awesome. Hopefully get to go to a game there one day. I did want to comment on their tailgating. I was surprised how many Duke fans were out there early tailgating, but I'll throw this out there. What do you think they had on their TVs at the Duke tailgates?
Modern Family.
They were all out there tailgating, grilling, drinking beer, watching tennis the other day. Which,
hey, there were some big tennis matches going on this weekend.
No shade of tennis, but it just seemed to fit what you would imagine they might be watching on TV at their tailgates. Which, to give them some credit, there was no other football on, so I just kind of found that funny walking by dudes like chugging beers and grilling meat and tennis. So, and the stadium there is a beautiful stadium, and I don't mean this as a backhanded compliment or anything, but it gives the vibe of like some of those massive 6A Texas high school type stadiums. But it was very nice. There's not any shade there, but I really enjoyed the stadium. It was easy to get in and out of. In many ways, it was easier to get in and out of than at Clemson, a little bit more organized. And then they also sell beer there, which, as the game went on, I did visit the concession stands, get a couple high gravity beers, and it didn't help. But spent a lot of money there. So you covered a lot of the stuff that I want to talk about in the game. Special teams. I don't put as much blame on our kicker, our new kicker, which I'm failing to remember his name. I think it's a lot more of your protection, which you kind of discussed there.
Robert Gunn, the third, Gunn. I think.
We discussed the receiver drops, no separation, the poor tackling on the defense. One thing I do want to point out, it could have been a lot worse. Duke dropped 2 other interceptions, and Clemson's only touchdown came off of a Duke fumbled punt.
Yeah.
Could have got shut out.
Exactly. I saw somebody, a Duke fan or somebody, talking about we were a muffed punt away from a shutout. And
yeah.
It's true. I mean, and I do want to go back to the receivers and not getting separation. Another player that I want to say by name that I was disappointed in is Cole Turner. I don't think Cole Turner is ready to be in the rotation for us. He just wasn't. There were a few opportunities where the ball was thrown up and Cade could have given a better ball. Like, I'm not going to say that, but there were a few opportunities where it seemed like our receivers weren't giving the physical effort that we're used to seeing from, like, I mean, I know this is a generational example, but like a Mike Williams. Mike Williams was one of those guys that would go up and get the ball. T. Higgins is a little less of a generational example, I guess, but I just didn't see Cole Turner fighting for the ball like that. And I think Jason Priester even mentioned about Cole Turner not being physically ready to block on the perimeter just yet. So I'm not sold on Cole Turner yet. We didn't get the downfield opportunities that we were looking for, and that's probably his strength, but everywhere else in between, I'm not impressed.
I think because of his inexperience, we got to allow him a little bit more time. But we do not have anybody on this team that will go up and get a ball. The days of having someone like Mike Williams and those guys go up and snatch a ball out of the air, we don't have those guys, and that's evident after one game already.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to just clarify that the Mike Williams comparison is a tough one. Like, I think that's a generational type of guy who's going to win 50-50 balls. Like, in that context, he's generational at that type of skill. We've never seen anything like that before.
Did want to point out, I was reading an article today on Tiger Illustrated, a quick plug for them, and Paul Strelo. He said this in his, I believe it was their morning after post. He said, many games are lost rather than won. A strong case can be made for the Tigers having more influence in Monday's night outcome than Duke, to whom which certainly is warrants giving credit. And then I didn't watch the broadcast, which before I even read this comment, we had our fact or fiction. There was over under 3.5 B-roll shots of Cameron Indoor Stadium during the broadcast. Was that over or under, Matthew?
To be fair, I honestly didn't notice any.
Oh.
I might have
hit there.
Yeah, I might have been tuning out a little early as like they were heading to commercial breaks and missed some, but I particularly didn't notice any specific Duke basketball talk, which I'm pretty happy about, and made the experience a little bit better. Yeah.
Speaking of the broadcast, Tom Luganbill, who was the field reporter for the game, he's also ESPN's national recruiting analyst, during the game said this: from the field level, and I cannot believe I'm saying this, there was not a huge discrepancy in the team speed today between these two teams. that right there, that's something that kind of makes me mad.
Yeah,
You can't teach speed, but the fact that Clemson, who's known for having the superior athletes all these years, and you go to Duke, which kind of leads into my next point. They have like two, I think, 4-star players. None of their players were recruited by Clemson. And the level of talent that Clemson has, and there's not a discrepancy in the speed of these two teams, that's a little disheartening.
yeah, I think I mentioned it earlier talking about on defense, like our linebackers are supposed to be some of the fastest in college football, and we were looking slow to the line in a lot of the exchanges that happened. I mean, this is another thing that makes like a doomer mentality kind of go off, is like we can't even rely on the athleticism anymore to just go out and beat teams like Duke. I mean, to be fair, I'm not going to take credit away from Duke. Like, they've been building a program and have brought it up from the ashes pretty much. So I'm not saying that, but just the fact that Clemson used to have a clear level above all other conference opponents pretty much, and even national opponents, competing with Alabama as far as personnel goes. Like, it's pretty disappointing to see us go out there and look equally matched against a mid to high level ACC team. It doesn't, at a bigger picture, it doesn't give us a good look on leaving the ACC.
No, all this talk about conference realignment and you go out there and you lay an egg against Duke does not help your case. I did want to end on somewhat of a positive note, though there is a but in the statement. The team was, when it comes to penalties, very disciplined. Only one penalty the entire game. Unfortunately, the timing of that one penalty did hurt the Tigers. So the Tigers only had one penalty for 5 yards. Defense didn't. Penalties were a little bit of an issue with the defense last year. They didn't give up any penalties in Monday night's game against Duke. So
yeah, very impressive.
Want to highlight that. Very
impressive, because if you think about, they were airing the ball out a little bit. Our coverage was very good. We talked about our DBs beforehand. We're going to be another strength of the team, and that they showed up. They were tight in coverage pretty much all game. And you kind of touched on it earlier about you can't expect your defense to hold up every time. Like, your offense has to do something at some point. But you are right about decreasing penalties. It just sucks that our one penalty of 5 yards happened on the 1 yard line.
Yeah. It was very unfortunate. So, are we ready to wash our hands and move on from this week 1 debacle?
I was ready on Monday night.
All right, other notable week 1 games. I don't know which of these you had a chance to watch, Matthew. All summer I look forward to college football getting back, and then week 1 gets here and I'm like, this slate kind of sucks. I was trying to figure out what games I wanted to watch. I had two TVs up at one point. I even had a computer monitor up at another point, and I was struggling to fill those screens with games that seemed somewhat interesting to me. But immediately after college game day, I flipped over to Colorado TCU. I was someone who was kind of don't expect much out of Colorado this year. I feel like Coach Prime is going to have success, but I didn't think it was going to be a huge impact in season 1. And the way they performed against TCU was that was a fun game.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my expectations for Colorado and Prime were similar, not much, but not much in Clemson terms, much in the terms of Colorado Buffalo football. Like, this is a team that had 1 win last season. But yeah, this game, amazing game, great to watch. If you can find a replay of it online, go watch it if you missed it, because it was great. Colorado athletes all over the field. It is so fun to watch. They have the Heisman winner on their roster, and I'm going to make this statement right now. I'll hold it through the rest of the season too, probably, but
Even if they're a 5-win team?
They're not going to be a 5-win team. Come on.
I think they're going to, once they get some of those tougher I enjoyed the game. They're better than I expected. I think that the hype is a little too much for Colorado, and TCU was a little overrated. I think Colorado's going to win some games that maybe people in the preseason weren't expecting them to win, but I don't know that they're going to be bowl eligible this year.
See, I disagree. I think they're definitely making a bowl. I think they have playoff potential right now. Like, they have the talent on the roster to make the playoffs. So I think I'm not going to discount that playoff run. Shedeur Sanders or Travis Hunter, I think, are the two front runners for the Heisman right now, though.
My thing is, what was it? I forget his name. Hunter what?
Travis Hunter.
Travis Hunter. He balled out. I don't think that the 116 odd snaps that he took is sustainable.
Yeah,
for
that's
an entire
true.
season.
We'll see. I mean, I know he did it at Jackson State, and that's a little different of a competition level. So we'll see if he can sustain it in a Power 5 conference. But I mean, he was the number 1 recruit coming out of high school. Like, he's been that guy. So he hasn't shown any evidence for me to think he won't be able to keep it up, but it will be interesting to see because, like you said, like he had over 100 receiving yards and interception, played over 100 snaps in the game. Like, if he has the conditioning and cardio to get that, like, go for it, because that's a guaranteed Heisman if he continues at this rate with his defense and offensive performance. But I loved that game. It was great. Louisville, Georgia Tech, though. I do want to give a quick shout out to whoever Georgia Tech's coach is. I don't know his name. Thank you for covering in the last minute of the game. We'll get to that in a minute. But in the last minute of the game, Georgia Tech covered and kept me perfect on the week. So.
That was unfortunately about the time that I turned the game on to see that, and I immediately turned it off. So I put that on here like I felt like I had something to say about it, but I watched so much football this weekend, I don't really remember what I was going to say about that game.
No, it was a good game. I watched the first half, like most of it, and Georgia Tech got up big, and it almost seemed like they were in a position to run away with it. But you talked about last week about Louisville being a better improved team this year, and they showed that. They came back. They were able to make up. I think they had close to a 3-score deficit. It was at least 2 scores at halftime. So shout out to Louisville for being able to come back from that and win the game. I'm just very happy Georgia Tech covered. It was a back and forth crazy game.
Well, I was happy about the result in the Battle of the Carolinas, North Carolina versus South Carolina. North Carolina's defense looked pretty solid, and South Carolina's offensive line looked porous.
Made me excited.
They could not block. Spencer Rattler looked great when he was not running for his life. But that was a fun game to watch. I was looking forward to that game all day, and we used Dish, and I completely forgot that Dish in the Charlotte area has a conflict with ABC. It's been more than an entire calendar year, and go to turn on that game and it won't come on. I had to bum somebody's YouTube TV password to watch that game. I was so mad. I was like, if I cannot watch this game, the one I've been looking forward to all day, and then I can't watch it, I'm gonna be so mad. But thankfully, we got it figured out.
Yeah, I got to watch a lot of football like leading into the weekend, but once the weekend happened, I was pretty busy, so I was trying to catch games as they came. But North Carolina, South Carolina, this game would have been a lot more fun to talk about had the result on Monday been different.
Yes.
I know there's a lot of good conversation on Twitter from Clemson fans Saturday through Sunday through Monday evening about the South Carolina game. Yeah, it completely died off. All the momentum was lost on it.
Tobacco Road owned South Carolina this weekend. In fact, Furman I believe they played last Thursday. They are the only South Carolina football team that had a win this weekend, which someone tweeted out all the losses.
Yeah, I did see that tweet that you're talking about.
That hadn't been destroyed this bad since Sherman came through.
Yeah, it was like Wofford. I mean, you got to give Wofford some credit. They played Pitt. That's a tough game. But some of those other lower, like North Greenville, like those type of schools, like, come on, you got to give us some type of credit. I mean, we're last in education. Like, we can't be last in football too.
The Chanticleers tried. I got up and watched every minute of College Game Day at 9 a.m. and did not go to bed till 1:30, 2 o'clock when the UCLA Coastal Carolina game went over. So I watched a lot of football, and Coastal, like middle eight, those second and third quarters, was dominating that game despite being down 1 point for a large portion of that time. Eventually UCLA ended up scoring a touchdown, and at that point I knew, I was like, they're not going to be able to come back at this point. But it was a good game for a large portion of the time, and tried to get a win for South Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of my picks in our weekly pick'em contest, but I was busy that night, so I wasn't able to watch the full game. I was just checking the score, and I ended up falling asleep before it ended, and I checked it in the morning to make sure my pick hit, and it was euphoria when I saw that it hit.
Well, what about Sunday night? Did you get a chance to watch the LSU Florida State game?
Not as much as I wanted to. I did watch a decent amount of it, but I wish I could have seen the whole thing. I was, if anybody's from Atlanta, the Chattahoochee Food Works, it's like a food hall. I was there for the majority of the first half of the game. It was fun. I think LSU was probably overrated headed into the season, but it's still a good win for Florida State. I'm not discounting our chances against Florida State in week 4 yet because of how well we move the ball against Duke, and like we were talking about, like all the pieces were there. It's just everything unfortunate that could have happened, and like we're still a good football team, I think.
Yeah, I think there's some matchups that bode well for Clemson when it comes to Florida State, and also too, the final score can be a little deceiving. LSU was as dominant as Florida State was there towards the end in the fourth quarter. LSU was as dominant in earlier parts of the game too. So that bigger point margin can be a little deceiving. I think that LSU had opportunities to also win the game and take a hold of a larger lead than just like Florida State did.
Yeah, I mean, when I stopped watching, I believe it was like 17-14. We left our friend's house, and by the time we got back home and checked the score, it was a 2-score game at that point. So it was like a late game explosion. So I mean, I don't know if there were turnovers or anything that contributed to that. I didn't get to see the whole thing, but impressive week 1 showing for Florida State. I didn't expect Florida State to win this game as much as I wanted them to win, if that makes sense. I wanted them to win for Clemson's sake, but I didn't expect them to.
Yeah, I thought LSU was going to win that game, and those two receivers Florida State's got, they're going to be a problem in the ACC.
Yeah, I thought Johnny Wilson was going to be a big problem for us last year. He's their 6'7" receiver. I think he's number 14.
He's massive.
He's crazy. He's not slow either. He's fast. We were able to lock him up. I feel like we have good matchups in our secondary. For the Florida State game, we're getting a little ahead, but
we got to beat Charleston Southern first.
Yeah,
1 game at a time.
1-0 this week.
All right, before we get to our Twitter poll, we got to shout out our sponsor, Pump Monkey Septic Service. Pump Monkey's been loyal to Nachos and Analysis, and we appreciate their support. So go out and support Pump Monkey. They're owned and operated by Clemson alumni Alan Powell. They service the upstate, and they take a lot of the jobs that a lot of these bigger companies either don't have time to get around to. That was the issue here in the upstate when Pump Monkey was started. It'd take 2, 3, 4 weeks before they could get out and pump your septic service. So give them a call. Again, they service the upstate. Their phone number is 864-710-2211. Again, 864-710-2211. When the dump's funky, call Pump Monkey.
Twitter polls.
All right, our Twitter poll of the week. The question was, what was the most disappointing aspect of Clemson's performance Monday night? If you listened to the opening of the show, Matthew and I had quite a few things we found disappointing in Monday night's matchup with Duke. Again, we post this poll each week on Tuesday. So if you don't follow us on Twitter, give us a follow. Shout out to all of our new followers this week. We got quite a few new followers this past game week. But poll, what was the most disappointing aspect? Options were special teams, play calling, poor tackling, and turnovers. Before we reveal the results, Matthew, what were your takes on this?
Before I get into it, you shouted out the few people that followed us on Twitter. I do want to also shout out the few people that unfollowed us on Twitter on Monday night because of Drew was at the game, so I was controlling the Twitter account during the game. So I want to shout out all the guys that unfollowed my opinions. But I honestly can't decide between the top three options: special teams, play calling, poor tackling. Antonio, we've already talked about it. He's trying to do too much in the return game. Aiden Swanson, I think he played an okay game punting the ball. There were a few like ducks, but mostly he was able to flip field position. Kicking, we did have a few like kickoffs where it went through the end zone, but there was also the one in particular I'm thinking about, and I sent out a tweet at this time. After our only touchdown of the game, our kickoff on that touchdown was a duck. It was horrible. I tweeted out at that point that anybody who knows a kicker in the transfer portal or anybody who's friends with any soccer players already at Clemson to like let them know that we are in need. So I can't really decide between those. Play calling was disappointing because it really wasn't that much different than last year. We ran a lot of the same plays, a lot of the same schemes and concepts, which it does work. I'm not discounting that, but I think as far as fans go, we were expecting a little bit more variation in that sense. And tackling is close to being number one for me here because we've talked about defense is supposed to be our strength of this team. And when you go out and your strength of the team is giving up extra yards that we were in position to make the plays on, that's extra disappointing. And I know towards the end of the game, your defense is getting tired because your offense can't put anything together. But turnovers, as far as that goes, I think that's my least worry. It's almost something you expect in the first few weeks of a college football season. And it's something that goes across all of college football. Like every team is going through turnover trouble right now, honestly. Not necessarily as bad as Clemson's showing on Monday was, but turnovers is just something you kind of expect going into a new season. So I'm not that worried about that, but special teams, play calling, and poor tackling, that's going to lose us games.
So what was your answer? Or are you all three?
The first three, all of them except for turnovers.
Gotcha. My initial reaction was turnovers because they were some drive killers, leaving some points out there on the field. But I honed in on the word disappointing. We have high expectations for a lot of these returners on defense, and so I'm going with poor tackling for my answer there, which surprisingly was relatively low in the vote. The winner was turnovers with 54% of the vote. Second was play calling at 28%, poor tackling 13%, and special teams 5%. Had a couple people get in on Twitter with comments. Clemson football hot takes said wide receivers in all caps. Joey Garrison says, where is all of the above option? I think you would appreciate that one, Matthew. And then Vicky says red zone play.
Yeah, red zone play is a big one too. But yeah,
green zone.
Yeah, and green zone. All of the above is a good option. I explained why I'm not really that worried about turnovers. I mean, turnovers kind of became an issue towards the end of last season, so it has been a trend, but it's a new season, so not putting that much stock in turnovers. I think ball security is something that will come with time. but all the other things is something that we were almost expecting to be good at. Maybe not special teams, but we were expecting good things out of those play calling and poor tackling. We were expecting good things out of those and did not get them.
Yeah. Darien Rencher, former Clemson running back and host of the Journey podcast, joins the show. So here he is, Darien Rencher. All right, today we are joined by former Clemson running back and host of the Journey podcast, Darien Rencher. Thank you for joining us today, Darien.
Yo, what's good? Glad to be on here.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming by. Since we last had you on, you and your wife have welcomed a daughter into the world. How is fatherhood treating you?
It's a blessing, man. She's 7 months. A couple of days ago. It's been good. We got married. Her name is Beckham Honey Rencher. We had a honeymoon baby, hence the honey in the middle name. But she's been sweet. Wasn't the plan, but part of the bigger plan. But she's been a blessing, and it's been cool to see myself mature as a dad, and then to see her grow as my daughter. It's been amazing. Nothing like it. So shout out to all the girl dads out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Pivoting over to football, obviously this isn't really the conversation we thought we'd be having heading into week 2, but what are your kind of thoughts about what we saw on Monday and kind of where the program is at right now? I know you've been out of it a couple years at this point now, so what are your thoughts on kind of Clemson football, the state of Clemson football right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely like a pivotal time. I mean, just because of the expectations that have been built, as such a prestigious program, really underneath the Swinney era, to see him build it to such a, honestly, like a blue chip program to where we're at the top of the mountain and amongst the elites and amongst the consistent championship holders, winners, NFL producers, what has been the past almost decade now. And then all the success we had during my run, like really from 15 to 2021, like you win 2 natties, you go to playoffs every other year, you win the ACC championship every year. And then obviously seeing some of the, adversity that we faced since the Ohio State game, then kind of going to 2021, 2022, then obviously this season we're in now. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's trying times, but I think it's definitely like a difficult moment, just because of the standard that's been set. And I think nobody feels worse than the guys in the locker room, because I know that they want to live up to the standard and they're working hard to live up to the standard. And nobody takes more ownership than those guys and the coaching staff, because nobody at Clemson sets out to lose games or to not live up to what's been set and to take it beyond what's already been done. And so, yeah, man, I think it's opportunity. If I know anything about Coach Swinney, I know that's how he's thinking about it. It's an opportunity for Clemson yet again to me to be an example of how to overcome, how to be consistent, how to be the standard in college football. Obviously, a lot of eyes are on the program, probably more than they would have been if we won that game, honestly.
Yeah.
That would have been a routine win for Clemson. But I think now that happening, everybody in the country is watching what is Clemson going to do? Is the program going to is it going to crumble, or are they going to rise to be who everybody has seen them to be? Which I think that's going to be the case. I think luckily, I tell all my friends this. I mean, probably one of the most thankful things out of all this is that the ACC is actually good this year, because we still actually have a decent pathway to get to hit every other goal on there besides obviously win the opener of the kind of the 5 goals Swinney sets out for every year. I mean, usually people look at our schedule, it's a cupcake schedule, but they got 3 Heisman contenders, 3 of the top 10 guys. They got to face him this year. And honestly, Spencer Rattler could creep in there if he continues to perform well. We got to play Florida State, who's coming home. We got Notre Dame with Sam Hartman. We got UNC with Drake May. We got to play Carolina with Spencer Rattler and the boys. So, I mean, the schedule is actually setting up to where if we did want to redeem the season and kind of make a run for it, it's there, which is a blessing. Because in the past, if we lose a game like this, it's like people write us off immediately because the schedule doesn't even give us a chance to kind of redeem our name. So that's kind of fresh thoughts.
Yeah.
On everything. Yeah.
Oh, well, sorry, but I'm going to cut you off, Drew. Before we move on, I wanted to ask where you got your hat from.
Yeah, I get a lot of my hats from Stripes Vintage. So
Okay.
Clemson.
Yeah.
I got a friend that owns a store down there right beside Spill the Beans. He carries a lot of cool vintage Clemson stuff. I'm big into vintage. He's got a bunch of stuff. really any types of vintage, but he carries a lot of cool vintage stuff. So I get a lot of stuff from him.
I
So shout out
shop
to Stripes with him.
I shop a lot there too, so
Yeah.
I wish I could have got that one though.
That's so smooth.
So, Darien, as someone who's lived it as a Clemson student athlete, during your time there were not losses, but there were a few losses at your time there. What does the day after a disappointing loss, a game where you went in with confidence, you thought you were going to win, didn't go your way, what does that next day, what did the Tigers feel like walking into that facility Tuesday morning?
Yeah, I mean, you wake up the next day and realize like the sun's still shining. Like it's like it feels like the end of the world, but it's not really the end of the world. So that's kind of perspective there. And then beyond that, I mean, you realize you get reminded like what I know Coach Swinney and the coaching staff preaches all the time is like, I mean, like you got moments you have to maximize, and once that moment's gone, you can't get it back. And then now it's kind of windshield mentality. Like, all right, that's in the rear view. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can go back and change about that game, even though you kind of have regrets. You have all these things, but all right, what's next? That's all you can control, and you just gotta have faith that like, all right, if it's meant to be for them to hit the other aspirational goals that the Clemson family would love for them to see, with us the AC championship, winning division, beating Carolina, making a run for the playoffs, and all those things. It's like, all right, well, we got to control. So, I mean, that's probably I know that's the message and that's the mentality I would think has happened when I would go back into the after loss. Because I really only in-season loss I think I had was the Pittsburgh loss during the season in 2016. Besides that, actually, take that back. 2021, we had a couple losses. Yeah, and I think that's the mentality. It's like, all right, you can't go back. You can't do anything to change that. What you do, control what you do next. And I think the thing about Clemson is like you watch a lot of these games, even though the score makes it scores what the score was, but you watch the tape and you watch really what's going on. You're a couple plays away from that being a totally different game. Like it's not even like speculation. It's like we have a couple different plays. Like we draw the ball down the field, we don't turn the ball over in the 5-yard line twice. Like you have two of those scores. It's a totally different style of game. The energy's different and the momentum's shifted, and it's a different game. So I think there's a lot to, as daunting as people feel about the game, there's actually a lot to build off of. I know Swinney's also highlighting you did a lot well. Like obviously you lost, the country's coming at you, but there's a lot of positives within all that stuff that the masses won't even take a chance to look at. But as a football coach, like, hey, like everything didn't go wrong. There's a lot that went right. Obviously, there were some crucial moments, some really good punches that just can't happen if you want to win big ball games at this level. And so I think that's what he's doing. I think he's obviously, the guys know how they feel. They know it sucks. He's probably letting them know, like, hey, this is the reality. If you don't show up every week and go win the game, and go like you got to be on your X's and be on your P's and Q's and know your assignments and do what you need to do. But like y'all are a good football team. Like, there were a lot of good moments in that game on defense, offense, and special teams. Even though like we were covering a fumble, like there's a lot of good effort plays in there that I know Swinney's highlighting to show guys like, hey, like don't buy into the outside hype. Like it really matters what you guys think on the inside. So
Yeah, I mean that kind of leads into my next question. Dabo kind of talked about it in his post game where he called it a weird game where a bunch of stuff that normally doesn't happen in the same football game all happened to Clemson, where multiple turnovers inside the 5, like you said, a few special teams errors, and then some just missed tackles on defense. So what do you think is, like, of those mistakes is coachable and like able to fix in a week-to-week basis? Because a lot of, there's certain stuff that you can't necessarily fix in 1 week. It's a drill thing, like a fundamental type thing. So
right.
What are you looking for mostly coming into week 2?
Yeah, but I think to me, I don't think that game, as much as everybody looks at Duke and thinks, that game was going into, everybody thought we were going to blow them out. Like, they're a good football team. So hats off to Coach Elko, and you got some, obviously, quarterbacks a stud. They're a good football team, and we almost had identical records last year. They went 9-4, we went 10-3. And people don't look into all that. They just see Duke as the old time Duke school, but like they got a good team. And I'm sure it'd be interesting to see like what they do for the rest of their way. I think they're going to win a good bit of ball games in ACC and hopefully make a bowl game. But then, like I said, that's kind of all like the assessment of me kind of like the masses, they just look at Duke, they look at the score, but like there's a good football team. And I think as far as like fixing mistakes, I think ball security is always a premium. I think that's gonna be a big thing. Just like, all right, let's just ball handle. It's really like a lot of routine things that happen, and it was mainly like Clemson kind of beating Clemson. Like if we don't fumble the ball, like we have a chance to go score and win.
Yeah.
Obviously the block field goal was like that's a routine thing. Like we shouldn't get field goals blocked. But I think to me a lot of things are coachable. I think the thing is like they also ran a lot of cover too, so people like want to like, hey, let's throw deep balls. But like if you got two deep safeties, it ain't too many deep balls you can just throw. Like you can give some guys some chances. So I'm interested to see like, all right, what is the next team? How they're gonna play us? All that good stuff to see how the ball can be dispersed more. But to me, I think a lot of things are fixable. I think obviously it'll be cool to see what happens on Saturday. And I think to me, with a lesser opponent, you just want to see cohesiveness more so than you want to like. It's obviously gonna be different level of playing. But you really want to see those guys on offense go out there and be confident. You want to see guys make plays. You want to see us score points. You want to see the defense shut people out. Withhold yards, like all that good stuff. You just want to see a kind of like the whole team kind of come together. Like special teams holding their end. Offense doing their thing, defense doing their thing. I think the other day you kind of saw what happens when each part doesn't do their job. It can look really it can look really weird. It's like when people just like because a lot of times people don't even watch the PAT. People score a touchdown, they look over, eat their chips, go grab another bite to eat. It's kind of like it's a routine play.
Yeah.
But the moment somebody blocks a field goal, it's like, okay, dang, maybe that is an important play. So I think you see the gravity of every little thing kind of working together.
That is exactly why I'm wearing my Unity shirt today. I want to see I want to see the team play unified. So you were someone towards the end of your college career who got to take advantage of the NIL. Where does Clemson, in your mind, rank amongst its peers in college football when it comes to NIL, the money, the figures, or the opportunities available to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to see a lot of that stuff just because I know like the ins and outs of NIL and brand deals. And I think a lot of the stuff you see online is like a lot of speculation. And I don't think nobody's really giving out true indicators of what's really happening or what's really going on, which I think would be helpful because the same way, like you kind of know in like professional sports, you know how much money is being dispersed, you know who's getting this amount of money. I think it's tough as every school is trying to navigate being competitive in this space. Is nobody really knows how much money is being in and out or what's given to who. And so on that note, I think that Clemson's trying. I think they're doing a really good job of obviously a lot of guys that marquee players that were on Clemson didn't leave Clemson because they've been taken care of, in the new NIL format with the collective. And then as far as NIL opportunities, I think there's a misconception like just because you can make money doesn't mean you're going to just make money. Like the collective is more so like they're able to, say kind of give guys an extra boost of a stipend. That's probably the best way I could explain it. Like they're able to partner with guys and guys would be able to get a substantial amount of money for different deliverables within that system. Beyond that, what my experience with NIL was you need to have a brand, like some followers, some type of digital IP to then go monetize. And so I think that's more so based upon individual to individual. Like obviously the quarterback's going to have a bigger brand, more likely at a school like Clemson. You'll get opportunities, guys like Shipley. But besides that, I mean, a walk-on with a big brand could just get as much opportunities as any other guy on the field as far as just like endorsement deals or brand opportunities. And so I think schools can help, but I think that's more on an individual basis of how much effort they're putting into their personal brand, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Dabo has at many times, depending on the person's perspective, has maybe been reluctant to make changes at times, or maybe just delayed, or just deliberate in his decision making. When it comes to the transfer portal, it's not really something that Clemson has seen and dipped their toe in. With the changing of everything, you see Coach Prime out in Colorado bringing in virtually an entire new roster. Is it something that you think that we're going to see at Clemson, especially if your recruiting is not up to the standard maybe you thought, or you need to fill some positions for some starting roles? Do you see Clemson maybe even next offseason heading that direction?
Yeah, I think that I think people can course correct like a little too much. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying that obviously what they're doing is successful. Um, like I said, it'll be interesting to see the longevity of anybody's like philosophy. I think what you've seen with Swinney is the philosophy has worked for a long period of time. You know, so to ask anybody to just change immediately what they're doing when it's worked, and obviously you kind of see it. Is this season a fluke? Is this season outlier? So there may be some trends that he's already kind of corrected. Like he's already kind of put himself out there. Where that's like maybe hiring Garrett Riley. You know, like there's different things I feel like he's done or doing. But I think as a leader, you never want to be emotional. You know, you want to see how things play out.
Yeah.
And then there's always like hindsight's 2020. You know, so people want to say like, hey, we should go tap into the portal, all this good stuff, but then you look at the guys we're getting like. You probably tap into the portal to either get a proven college football player or maybe get a 5-star who just wasn't happy or whatever. But you look at the roster, there's a lot of talented guys on paper. So they're doing a good job recruiting and bringing in really good talent. And with those guys, like every school, you got guys who you miss on. Like you think they're going to be a stud, and it's not. And that's part of like the game of playing college football. But I think the thing that Coach Swinney is not thinking about it or not entertaining it, I think is not true. There's been a couple guys they were thinking about getting, but it just didn't work out. You know, whether they had positions they want to fill, they may have not hit mainstream media just because it's like it just didn't work out. But I know he's definitely entertained the thought. I think at Clemson there's a Clemson way, which people can like, love, or hate. You know, there's obviously been a lot of success in what he's done, how he's went about his business, and so to me, I think he's always prided himself on being innovative, but at the price of what? You know, at the price of culture, who knows? And so I think it's one of those things too. It's always like recency bias. It's like, all right, I love what Coach Prom's doing. I love what I'm such a fan. But if you look at what he's doing, some of his marquee players, are they really like portal guys or they're guys he raised up? You know, the two best players on the team are his son and Travis Hunter, and they were in the portal to get to Colorado. But at the same time, he developed those guys for the last 2 years, and they're his marquee players in the school. There's obviously and his other son, Shiloh Sanders, who plays safety. Three of the best players on the team aren't the traditional like, let me get in the portal, go get a guy out the portal. It's like three guys he raised up. But obviously, a lot of other cases of guys who may not be marquee names on that team, like Levante Bentley plays he's a linebacker for Colorado, came from Clemson, went to Colorado. I think it'll be interesting to see after the season. But then again, what happens if we start winning games? People gonna shut up, you know? And to me, that's what I'm interested to see. Like, I think Sweet also is all right. So is the objective to be new or is the objective to win? And so like, and I think there's a little bit of both that obviously aids into the new age of winning. Maybe the transfer portal is a better way for some schools even a playing field. But when I see it, I mean, you recruit one of the best quarterbacks in college on paper. You know, you got some of the best backs in college that have proven themselves. You got good receivers. I think it's going to be a test to see what can this team do. I thought this team would be honestly a big case study to see like what he does. Like if they go win games, then like is it broken? You know, if they don't, I mean, obviously the season isn't what people expected it to be. Maybe that he'll entertain it more, but I don't know. I think this year will be good to see. Like I think any good leader is not an emotional leader. You know, I think he's gonna look back and see like, all right, what needs to be done. I think Swinney's, as you can see, like people say he's not innovative, but like he's been innovative to get to this point. Like, he hasn't not been innovative. I think this is one of the key things. Like he has some traditional stances, but like whether it's NIL or whatever, but even NIL, like he had his thoughts on it. Like and people misunderstand what he's saying, but he has adapted. Clemson does have NIL opportunities available to where you see guys are getting taken care of. You know, and this would be another case to see like no matter what happens at Clemson, there's going to be a way it's going to be done. It's going to be a Clemson way. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
A long-winded answer. I hope it gave it to you. That's my answer. Yeah.
Oh, no, absolutely. Well, it's been fun, Darien. Before we let you go, is there anything that you can let the listeners know you got going on? I know we mentioned at the top your podcast, the Journey podcast. If you want to plug that or anything else you got going on, let the listeners know.
Yeah, man. Like the Journey podcast, got a couple episodes up. We're going to get some more here coming like late fall, early spring. So we're going to tap into that. Got some good episodes on there. for some Clemson family, some other people that are notable people out in the world. And then as far as like socially, I'm on every platform, so look me up. Continue to support me. Continue to support me as you guys have done. The Clemson family, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all that good stuff. And then got a clothing brand came out with The Journey. We just launched like 2 weeks ago, which has been really exciting. And so I've always been into fashion. Want to kind of combine some passions of mine and see what happens. So The Journey clothing brand's out. And then I got hopefully some cool announcements coming soon where I want to be more connected with the Clemson family. I think I'll be able to announce here in the weeks to come. So that's really it, man. Thank y'all. Like, look, if you listen, Clemson's been really good to me, and I was thankful to go there. Thankful to be a part of the Swinney era and what Swinney's done, and all the coaching staff that's come through. And I'm really excited. I think that I believe in the program. I believe in the coaches. I believe in the guys that are still there. I think bright days are ahead. Like that's where I'm saying. I'm believing bright days are ahead, and we'll see what happens.
Awesome, Darien. We really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on, and looking forward to seeing the big announcement soon.
Appreciate it.
Fact or fiction?
All right, fact or fiction. Nachos and Analysis rolls out the Fire Dabo merch in the 2023 season.
So if you notice Matthew's reading that one, normally I read these off because I normally come up with them. Matthew came up with that one and wanted to own that one. I'm going to say fiction. Nachos and Analysis will not be making Fire Dabo merch.
See, like, in my mind, I really want to make it, but at the same time, if I saw somebody wearing a shirt that said Fire Dabo, like, I would laugh at them. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna say at this rate, fact after week 1. Matter of fact, at this rate, it'll be available before week 4. So we'll see how the next few weeks goes. We'll see.
Wouldn't that be something? In College Game Day still came to town. They just get a shot of the crowd somebody wearing Fire Dabo.
Everybody's wearing them.
All right, fact or fiction, Clemson will be a 14-point dog at home against Florida State in 2 weeks.
I will say, usually I'll read the fact or fictions beforehand, and this time I'm just straight reactioning them. So I'm going to say fact. It might be 13.5, around 14 points that Florida State's going to be the favorite in. It's really going to depend on how both of these teams look in the next few weeks, but I haven't really looked at Florida State's schedule. I'm not sure what their next 2 weeks are looking like, but Clemson's probably going to have a good opportunity to at least prove that we're a competent football team. But I expect to be minimum 13.5 underdogs to Florida State.
If you ask me Wednesday morning, as I'm waking up wondering if the night before was a dream, say Wednesday, Tuesday, whatever,
Tuesday.
the day after the game, I would have said fact. This team is going to be a 14-point or more underdog at home to Florida State. I tend to agree with you. I think it's going to be more in that like 12 to 13.5 point underdog. However, that's still a huge deal after what you look. Clemson, prior to losing to South Carolina last year, had the nation's longest home win streak. They don't lose at home. And you enter a game being a double-digit underdog at home in Death Valley. That says a lot. But I think it's going to be – I think it will be a double-digit, not quite up to the 14-point, 2-touchdown mark. But how Clemson performs next 2 weeks, which granted you're not going to learn a lot, but you can clean up a lot of those mistakes these next 2 weeks, and I think that'll have a big impact on that line. All right, fact or fiction, Clemson is the 4th best team in the ACC.
Well, I think I saw some power rankings on Twitter today. Maybe Eric McLean power rankings with Florida State at number 1. You got North Carolina up there, and Pitt had a pretty decent showing. I'm going to say fiction because I think Clemson is the 2nd or 3rd best team in the ACC. I think.
Don't forget Duke.
I mean, we're overall a better team than Duke, and I think if we played them again later in the season, it would be a different outcome. We just kind of got screwed with being a Monday night game first week of the season. We've talked about it before about how much we don't like that, but it's just the nature of the game. So I'm going to say fiction. I think stacked up head to head against every team in the ACC, Clemson is winning all but maybe one or two of those games.
I was leaning towards, yes, they are. In fact, they are the fourth best team. I'm going to say they're the third best team. I think it's Florida State and North Carolina, 1-2, Clemson at 3. Like you pointed out, if Clemson and Duke played again 10 more times, where you're not having the anomaly of all these mistakes happening all in the same game, I think Clemson wins 8 out of 10. So I think Clemson is better than Duke. However, they did not do it when it mattered Monday night. But fiction, Clemson is not the fourth best team in the ACC. They're the third best.
A little bit better.
All right, week 1 recap for our Pick'em contest. Each week, Matthew and I give out our favorite underdog, over, and under pick. We tally those up with 1 point each based on how many you get correct. And have the best of first weeks, unlike Matthew. We're going to get into reviewing our picks. I will say last week we talked about punishments, and one of the ideas that was floated out, we're going to try to work something out before we officially maybe announce that we're going with a poll or what the punishment will be. Matthew, you and I hadn't talked about it since I texted you about it the other week, but I'm going to try to pursue that idea.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I was wondering if you had put out the poll yet, because I was getting questions asked to me by people of when the poll was going to come out. I did put the poll up. If you're a Spotify listener, I did put the poll up on Spotify. I didn't even know this was a thing, but apparently if you scroll down through the description, you can put polls in Spotify. I was the only person who voted in ours, and I voted for the national championship prediction tattoo. But yeah, we're chasing a sponsorship right now. If not, the poll should be coming soon.
Yes, we're trying to secure the bag and create some good content at the same time. So more on that in the future. But regardless, we still got to make these picks each week. Matthew went with a undefeated record in week 1, and I went 2 for 2. So Matthew on the season leads 4-2.
Yeah, I'm like that. I'm that guy. I'm him. I went 4-0 week 1. Let's go.
See if you can keep that magic this week.
I wouldn't put money on it, but the stats
technically are.
The stats are in my favor. I did want to say about one of your picks last week, the USF Western Kentucky game. It was a bold pick, and USF did put on a good showing and better than they had looked in years. So it's good foresight for you. It's just they're not quite there yet to compete.
Was hoping their offensive production was gonna make up for the lack of Kent State, and honestly, I can't for the life of me remember what the point total ended up being in that game, but UCF did put up some points.
Yeah, it was a closer game than a lot of experts would have thought. So. Did want to give you some credit on that one. Getting into week 2, want to move on to our favorite picks. I'm going my favorite this week, Colorado. Hard to pick against them. They're facing Nebraska. They're a 3-point favorite right now against Nebraska. I think it's going to be a blowout. Nebraska isn't going to keep up with Colorado's speed. Colorado has athletes all over the roster, all over the field, offense, defense. That one's not going to be close.
I looked at that one. I considered that one, but going back to my earlier point, I don't know. There was a lot of hype. They looked great, but I don't want to put any money on Colorado as of yet till we get a little bit bigger sample size. For my favorite, I went with Texas A&M minus 4.5 at Miami. Didn't look too bad last week, and I'm hitching my wagon to the Aggies there.
All right, moving to underdog. I'm taking Northwestern. They're only a 1-point underdog to UTEP this weekend, University of Texas El Paso. For those who don't know what UTEP means, I don't know.
I played them once many years ago.
Yeah, I mean UTEP also. I think there's like a movie about their basketball program or something. It's an old Disney movie, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know anything about either of these teams, honestly. +1 is a pretty tight margin, and Northwestern is usually a decent team. UTEP is a decent team, so basically just picking Northwestern to win that one outright.
My underdog pick is Vanderbilt +10.5 at Wake Forest. I was pleasantly surprised in Vanderbilt's Week 0 performance. Wasn't overly impressed with Wake Forest's Week 1 performance, the first game post Sam Hartman, and 10.5 points to an SEC team. I don't think Wake Forest covers that spread, so I'm taking Vanderbilt +10.5.
That's interesting. I was kind of impressed with Wake Forest's Week 1 performance. I know they didn't have like stiff competition or anything, but I thought I watched a good amount of that game. I thought their offense moved pretty well. Vanderbilt, I wasn't that impressed with against Hawaii, so that's an interesting pick. I've thought about going the opposite way on that one, honestly, and putting that for my favorite. So I'm interested to see how that one's going to turn out. Moving on to over.
Haven't had one of those yet this year.
Yeah. Moving on to over. I think this is another game I don't really know anything about. Picking Marshall at ECU. That's ±44. 44 is just really low for a football game nowadays. I mean, I don't really have any evidence about which way or another. I just picked that one.
My over pick, I'm going Notre Dame at NC State. Over under set at 51. Notre Dame has put up some points already. NC State has had an offense that's been able to move the ball. I think 51 is low for this matchup here, so I'm taking the over there.
All right, and lastly, going on to under. I did a really bad job with picks this week because I don't know anything about any of these teams that I picked. I'm picking Ohio versus FAU. That's ±61.5. I did see a little bit of Ohio last week and FAU last week. Both good teams. I just think 61.5 is a little high. I expect that one to be a little lower scoring, but again, no evidence. I'm just picking.
I'm going kind of against your favorite pick there. I'm taking Nebraska at Colorado under 59.5. It did not look great in their first game. I don't see them putting up a lot of points, and I also see Colorado kind of losing a little bit of its luster a little bit this week. I may be wrong, and you talk about their Heisman Trophy aspirations. I don't want to against them. That'd be awesome if you see a two-way player win a Heisman Trophy. I got to see it before I can believe it. So I don't think you're going to see the points that Colorado put up last week again this week against Nebraska.
Yeah, I feel very confident in them. I watched a lot of that game against TCU last week, and they're very pass-heavy offense, but which usually would make me feel a little hesitant picking them for anything, really, because it's almost like in basketball, you live by the 3, you die by the 3, you live by the pass, you die by the pass. It's almost in that same vein, but just the way they were able to move the ball, and I know TCU's defense isn't stellar, but I think they're going to have matchup advantages across the board, which is why I'm leaning that way.
All right. We turn the page from week 1, and we move ahead to Clemson's next opponent, Charleston Southern. Saturday will be their first ever meeting with a very odd game time at 2:15. To my knowledge, I don't know that Clemson in recent history has played an odd time like 2:15 before. So checked the forecast because I was worried it was going to be about 117 degrees. It does seem a little bit cooler, if you could say that, high 80s. So not a terrible game time temperature for 2:15 in September. But like I said, they've never faced each other. There's no spread. There's no over-under on this game. The Tigers will be favored to win big here. Charleston Southern will be the 108th different opponent faced by Clemson all time. Clemson holds a 65-38-4 all-time record when facing an opponent for the first time.
Trivia, name all 38 teams that Clemson's lost to when facing the first time.
That one might be difficult, but I do got a little trivia question that will kind of address one of those here coming up. So Clemson has won 16 of its last 17 when making its all-time debut against a new opponent, and that dates back to 2003. So the trivia question that I did make does relate to that. What was the first time an opponent handed to Clemson its only loss during that span between 2023 presently and 2003? What team was it that handed Clemson its loss?
The team that we played for the first time and lost to?
Yep.
I'm going to say Pitt.
You say Pitt?
Yeah.
Believe that was the second time we played them. Or no, we had played them previously, I
In
believe.
a bowl game, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want another guess, or you want me to throw the answer out?
Let me think real quick. Last 20 years. Yeah, Pitt was the first one that came to my mind, at least.
It was not a regular season opponent. It did occur
a postseason
in
one?
a bowl game.
Okay. Then it might even be Kentucky, South Florida. One of those teams that we played in a bowl game around that era.
Yep. The answer is USF.
Okay.
The Meineke Car Care Bowl. Tigers lost 31-26. It was the only losing season under Dabo Swinney, and it was the final game prior to the current streak of 10-win seasons the Tigers had. That was the game that Kyle Parker left. Felt like he left injured, or he just did not play well. And I believe Taj Boyd came in at some point.
That must have been 2010, right?
Oh, yeah, I forgot to leave that out. I believe that was 2010, yes.
Oh, well, I guess shout out to anybody watching on video. If you can see in my camera angle, got the 2009 Miami game playing behind me with Kyle Parker at quarterback. So interesting that was the trivia question.
Yeah. Entering this week's contest, Clemson is a perfect 37-0 against football champion subdivision team. So I've never lost to an FCS team. One other thing, I know I said we were turning the page on this past week, but Dabo Uniform Tracker came out and pointed out the real reason Clemson lost was because Dabo was not wearing a sweatshirt Saturday. That was the fact or fiction last week. Do we see Dabo break out a sweatshirt this week, or no?
No, that sounds awful for Dabo, but I do also have to call out myself and yourself for also the Dabo Uniform Tracker type stat where Drew wore a different hat for the first time to this game, and I also wore a jersey that I've never worn before while watching the game at home. So equal credit goes to Dabo, Drew, and me. We'll take 33% of the blame each.
Yep.
I'll take 33% of Dabo's salary also.
Yeah. I think the hat that I've worn virtually every single game for more than a decade.
Is it the hat you're wearing now?
It's similar to this hat.
Okay.
This is I got all this hair, and so a fitted Nike hat sucks with pulling my hair back. So this one has a spot for me to pull my hair back. It's a snapback.
Okay.
And the hat I've been wearing for years is a fitted hat. So I wore a Military Appreciation Day snapback Clemson hat to the Duke game the other day.
I think Saturday you got to go fitted cap, flow, no ponytail or bun, just let it flow out behind.
But here's my thing: should I test it? Is it the hat? shit, if we lose Saturday, then I know it's my fault. Do I run the risk of testing that?
I will say, usually, like, I grew up in a pretty superstitious household where we'd get like new Clemson gear every year, but you wouldn't wear it on the first game if it was a tight game. You wear it to a cupcake game and warm it in to the luck, warm it into the superstition. Like, you can't put the chance on a big game. You got to let it build. You got to build the superstition.
And that was my fault for not understanding how the magnitude of the big game. So that one's on me, y'all. I'll hand up. I'll take the blame for that one, or at least 33% of it. So back to actual real football. Tigers, like I said, 37-0 against FCS teams all time. Clemson has outscored FCS teams 1,555 to 254. That's all time, and an average victory margin of 35.2 points in each of those matchups. Clemson has won 36 of the 37 games by double digits, including each of the last 11. They've won those by 23.
What was I think I know the last one that wasn't within that margin, which wasn't a double-digit win? Is that Troy in 2016?
No, it was Wofford around that time.
Okay.
I should have included that date there, but I'm almost certain it's Wofford. I was expecting that to be Troy.
Yeah, I was specifically thinking of that Troy game. I wasn't a student at that time, but I remember that was the only game I've ever really sat in the Clemson student section. It was like a September early game, and I got roasted by the sun. Like,
I thankfully was not at that game. I was at my niece's birthday party, which celebrated her 10th birthday this past week. So I watched the LSU Florida State game at a 10-year-old's birthday party the other night. But I got another little via, if you will, here. This is going to be Clemson's 128th season as a football program. How many season openers have the Tigers had? Home season openers have the Tigers had?
Out of 128, I'm just going to think through this logically and talk it out. I got to think that at least like the first 20 to 30 seasons we're establishing ourselves and playing on the road a lot to open the season. So I'm thinking minimum 98 or maximum 98, I mean. And then you got to go to our neutral site games, which we've had a good amount at, and home and homes with Georgia. So I'm going to say...
I will say here for clarification, not how many seasons have you opened up a game at home, how many home openers total have there been?
Like where the first game of the season is at home?
No, like this is the second game of the season, but it's the home opener for the season.
Oh, so you're saying there's seasons where we did not play at home?
So you were on the right track. It was 123. So there were 5 seasons where Clemson did not play a single home game.
I do actually feel like I know that history a little bit. Like that, I know that once our football program started, like there was a few years there where we were that journeyman team going and getting beat up by everybody. Like that was our MO. So
yeah,
I knew I had that in my mind at some point, but
you had the right thought process.
Just misinterpreted. Yeah, misinterpreted the question.
Yeah, it could be a communication issue on my part. Clemson is 34-2 in home openers since 1987, and they have won 19 straight. And then the downer of a stat here, I suppose. Clemson's attempting to avoid losing back-to-back home games, or losing back-to-back games at home. This includes the 2022 finale loss against South Carolina. Clemson consecutive contests at Memorial Stadium since Tommy Bowden's final home game as head coach and Dabo Swinney's first home game as interim head coach.
It's a long time. I don't think it's going to happen this week, but definitely something we need to be looking out for now that we're not on our like 47 game home win streak anymore. Like, this is something we got to keep an eye on. We'll get 2 against Charleston Southern, and what do we have, Furman after that?
FIU.
FIU. I mean,
Florida Atlantic.
Oh well, Florida Atlantic's going to be a tough team. Honestly, they've looked decent this season, so I'm not even going to chalk that one down as a W. So we at least have one buffer game here between the South Carolina game and the FIU game, or FAU game. Sorry.
There is that 3 game set in back-to-back weeks in November that, depending on what this team ends up doing, you got 3 home games in a row before you hit the road to South Carolina, where you could potentially need to keep an eye on that. All right, final thoughts before we wrap up. I don't have anything to say about this game other than I want to see Clemson just clean some things up, get some confidence against a lesser opponent, and clean up those mistakes and start playing like you practice. Hopefully you practicing a little bit better than you looked on Monday night, and start building towards getting some momentum heading into that Florida State game in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm expecting a big bounce back week for the Tigers. The offense is going to look a lot better because just Charleston Southern is going to be outmatched athletically. Like, this game is going to look similar to how our games looked in 2018, where we were just outmatched against conference opponents. Like, but I don't put too much stock in how our offense is going to look through these next 2 games. It's going to be a big time for growth and learning. But as far as on-field performance, it's not going to dictate where our season goes. So,
you have a score prediction for week 2?
Yeah, I'm going big. I mean, I went big last week, and obviously it didn't work out. But I'm going 51-7. Like I said, I think the offense is going to be in groove here. Like, all we have to do is pound the ball, and we'll be able to win the game. Run the ball down their throats, don't turn the ball over. And that Troy game we were talking about, that was the biggest thing in that game of why Troy was even close, is red zone turnover. So I'm expecting a big week from the offense. Defense is going to look good like usual, and they should have more room to work with the offense actually putting some drives together and giving them a break. So if Charleston Southern scores more than 7, then it's a loss for us, I think.
I'm going for a big bounce back this week as well. I think the defense has got something to prove, and they're going to come out angry. So I'm going to call it a shutout, and Tigers win 54-0.
Okay, I like that. I would be happy if that happens.
All right, folks, that is episode 3. Thanks for joining us again. And as always, if you don't follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, all of that, TikTok, YouTube. Yeah. We're everywhere. So give us a follow, like, subscribe, comment, participate. Without y'all, we're just 2 guys on a Zoom call talking into a microphone. So we appreciate you listening, and join us again next week. Peace. Something about the way I sit in this chair after I've sat for a little bit, when I stand up, my tailbone hurts so bad. Never happens in any other chair.
Ugh.
Was that your tailbone?
Yeah, that was me. There's a frog in my apartment.
All right, week 1 rip. Start that over.
You thought about me ripping one?